Hello, everyone, and welcome to this session. This is the 7th edition of the International Sharing Forum on Human Rights and Gender Studies. The topic for today's session is gender and violent extremism. My name is Osei Enoch Aboagye. I am an international student of UIB from Ghana, and I am going to be the moderator for this event. Let me use this opportunity to welcome all panelists and say thank you for honoring this event. In this event, there are panelists from Indonesia, India, and Thailand. I will also recognize the presence of all participants and say thank you for joining. Okay, now let's move on to the first presentation, and it will be given by Ms. Neha Nair. Please welcome Ms. Neha Nair.
Thank you, Enoch, for the kind introduction. So, hello all. I'm very glad to be here. I am Neha, and I'm going to be speaking about how can women break the cycle of violent extremism. I'm a little unwell, so I'll be speaking very slow. But if you can't hear anything, please ask me to repeat it. Okay? So I told you I'm going to be speaking about how can women break the cycle of violent extremism. And I'm going to demonstrate this with the help of 3 stories. So in the first story, the guy you're looking on the screen is Arib Majid. Arib is a 23-year-old engineering student from Mumbai, India. He comes from a regular middle-class family that invests in education and believes that education is the strongest tool in uplifting life of yourself and others. And it's not just his family, but Arib believes in this too. And he was a very bright student. However, few years ago, he came across a woman called Karen Aisha Hamidon, the woman that you see on the left corner, on social media, who introduced Arib to jihadist ideology. She encouraged him to watch videos of radical preacher on YouTube and other social media platforms. And from here on, Arib became extremely interested in learning about what is happening in Palestine, what is happening in Iraq, what is happening in Syria. He started consuming more and more of radical content. And he also started communicating with Karen very frequently. Through different internet portals, he found an online community that shared the same views. And slowly, Karen convinced him to quit his studies and leave for Syria and join ISIS. And Arib did that. In Syria, as per his claims, he's responsible alone for killing over 650 people. A couple of years ago, during a transit from Syria to Turkey, he was arrested by authorities and was brought back to India and has been serving in prison since. The second story is about a 23-year-old guy called Umar Farooq. He's a Nigerian terrorist who, at the age of 23, attempted to detonate an explosive hidden in his underwear while on board a Northwest airline flight, which was going from Amsterdam to Detroit. When Umar's radicalization journey is not very different than Arib. But when Umar was getting radicalized, one of his sisters, he had 8 siblings, out of which 4 were sisters. One of his elder sisters had noticed the sudden change in Umar's behavior. Umar, who always had very liberal views, had suddenly become very critical of anything Western, be it Western clothes, Western music, or anything. He even asked his father, who worked in a bank, to quit his job because banks charge interest on money, which according to him were not permitted in his religion. Umar's sister, Zainab, was very disturbed seeing all these changes in him. But she did not confront him. She did not inform about this to his parents, and she did not share her concerns with anyone else. The result, Umar joined Al-Qaeda and acted on his violent instincts. And the last story I want to share is of a 19-year-old girl, Noor Shadira from Indonesia. Noor not only joined a terrorist organization herself, but also convinced her whole family to start supporting ISIS's operations in the region. Now, in all the three stories that I shared with you, women had key roles to play. In the first story, Karen was a recruiter. There's a passive actor in violent extremism. In the second story, Umar's sister was an observer who kept quiet. And in the third story, Noor Shadira was an active extremist. The story of all these people are quite different and yet similar. So, not only the roles of women in these stories were different, their actually social economic backgrounds of these women was also very different. So Zainab, for example, was from a lower economic background. Karen was from a middle class family, and Noor came from a very rich family that was quite influential. But all of this did not matter. They still had some connection related to violent extremism. Now, listening to the story of Arib, his radicalization story, do you think that at any stage his radicalization could have been stopped? His inclination towards violent extremism could have been stopped? Or do you think the cycle of radicalization could have been broken? The answer is yes. And it could not only have been broken, it could have been broken at multiple stages. And as women can have roles in all these three stages of radicalization, they can equally have a role, in fact, critical roles in all the stages of interventions. That is, de-radicalization or preventing the stages of radicalization. And I want to quickly talk about these three stages of radicalization. So the first stage is the pre-radicalization steps. Now, this is the step where women can play, I think, the most effective role and have been playing a very effective role in many, many communities. Because mothers, sisters, wives, daughters, female friends, they are often the first people to notice a change in any individual's behavior when he or she is on the path of radicalization. And if these women are taught how to do individual or community intervention, they can not only stop the radicalization of the person before it actually begins, but they can also prevent a radicalized individual from taking a violent action. There are programs that I have been part of where religious clerics, law enforcement, and female community leaders have come together and developed programs to build awareness, training, and reporting of violent extremism from women. And those programs have produced incredible results, especially in promoting peace, tolerance, and coexistence. This work focuses on preventing violent extremism long before it creeps into the community. And I know that many of the women here in this virtual room precisely today work specifically in this field, and I will let them speak more about these programs and their implementations and success later on. So I'm going to speak about more about during radicalization phase, where most of my work involves and where we have also seen very substantial results. So during radicalization, so there have been tried and tested programs where sorry, women have successfully broken the cycle of radicalization while radicalization is happening. So there are programs that are currently running in many, many countries under which women have been helping the law enforcement with identifying individuals and communities that are already talking to extremist group or terrorist organizations. There are women who actively keep a watch on what's happening on their society, and law enforcement and government authorities and sometimes religious clerics, they all collaborate with them. And these women, whenever they see signs where individual or some of the community members are developing inclination towards violent extremism, they inform the authorities. The law enforcement and government authorities, once informed, then apply different sorts of intelligence tools, both open and closed, to identify the whole network of individuals. So they identify networks of individuals, and once that network is identified, you can see one of the networks if of one person and all the individuals that that person might be connected to over social media platforms who could have linked to different extremist organizations. So once such network is identified, the authorities again seek the help of women in the communities to get an understanding of the reasons why the individuals might be sympathizing with extremist ideology or terrorist ideology. Is it because they come from poor families, are unemployed, and they joined an organization because it pays well, because it happens, or because they hate their own government, or they are going through a personal crisis? That what is the cause that is attracting these individuals towards a violent cause? And based on cause, again, the authorities seek help of women to connect these individuals with civil society, with religious cleric, and with law enforcement, whoever is needed for the intervention, so that then they can collectively de-radicalize them. So this is one kind of program where women help during radicalization phase. There's a second aspect that is becoming more popular in the tech industry. Yes. So where the second aspect is where women are now helping a lot of social media companies to change their algorithm through which a lot of people consume violent extremist content. So a lot of social media companies, big tech companies, now are hiring female community leaders on contract basis to help them prevent the creation of what we call echo chambers on social media. If you do not know what echo chambers are, the algorithms of many social media platforms are designed in a way that it keeps on showing you the content that you actually search for. For example, if you go ahead and look for swimming videos on YouTube, let's say, you will notice that YouTube will start suggesting you more and more videos on swimming. You will then start seeing ads of swimming classes on your Facebook. If you go to Amazon, you will start seeing suggestions for buying swimming costumes. All of these platforms are linked. So if you search for something, you're fed more of the same information. That's how the original algorithms function. So what happens is this is very dangerous, because if you go ahead and look for extremist content or violent content on internet platforms, all platforms are going to start showing you more of this negative content. And social media companies realize that this cycle needs to be broken, and they are taking help of female community leaders. So female community leaders now help social media companies identify what kind of content is ultra sensitive in their communities. They help them understand the nuances of their communities. And then based on that, the platforms develop better algorithms um, to take people out of their negative search and move them towards positive content. And they remove negative content. So now if you go ahead on social media and search, for example, for extremist content or hateful speeches of a radical preacher, the algorithm will show you the first video, but then they will slowly start showing you the negative effects of violent extremism, or they will slowly move you away from negative towards positive content. So they take you out of the echo chamber. So this is also a very effective mechanism where women are contributing through tech means a lot. And I want to talk about the last stage of radicalization, which is nothing could be done. Radicalization happened and a person has acted on it. So that's the last phase of radicalization. And here again, now women are playing a very critical role in helping government and law enforcement in de-radicalizing individuals who have already committed a violent extremist crime. So here the slides are a little off here because there was a dearth of material, but there are two very famous programs where women are playing a very crucial role in de-radicalization. Number one is Saudi Arabia's female de-radicalization program. What's happening in Saudi Arabia, there the government has implemented a program which is called as Munasaha program, which specifically targets women who have been influenced by extremist ideologies. These are the women who have been involved in extremist activities or have been radicalized in the past. So they are provided with counseling, education, vocational training, anything that is needed for them to reintegrate into the society. And they are deploying hundreds and hundreds of female counselors and mentors to play the crucial role of providing the guidance and support the needs of these women who were former extremists. So their involvement has been extremely instrumental in helping these women disengage from extremist ideology and rebuild their lives. The second program is Indonesia's Women Islamic State Detainee Rehabilitation Program, because Indonesia as a country has faced challenges of extremism like many countries, and they have implemented a comprehensive rehabilitation program for women who have been detained for involvement in terrorist activities. So the program is very similar. It focuses on providing psychological counseling, religious education, vocational training, and community reintegration support. There are women mentors and counselors who talk to these extremists and then provide cultural and religious context. They often have a lot of religious knowledge themselves, and they provide support, guidance, and membership to female detainees, helping them to reject extremist ideologies and reintegrate into the society. So, in a nutshell, as we saw, women can play very crucial roles in bringing the disconnected pieces of the society together to prevent violent extremism. They they serve as the key connectors within communities and thus can play a huge critical role in community engagement and mobilization. They are often at the forefront of identifying radicalization and extremism growing within their families and communities. Thus, they are very key elements in early detection and intervention. They play a pivotal role in shaping the values and beliefs of future generation, and they are very good educators and therefore can provide education and empowerment. And because they are very nuanced and very at the always at the forefront of providing support, they can provide support for victims and vulnerable population. And of course they can play a very critical role. In fact, they have been playing a very critical role in advocacy and policy influence when it comes to women's role in controlling violent extremism and doing effective policy making and community programs. So overall, women have a multifaceted role to play in bringing together diverse stakeholders for fostering resilience and promoting inclusive approaches to preventing violent extremism in communities. And I think these contributions are imperative to building more cohesive, tolerant, and peaceful societies. Next slide, please. Thank you. So I've said most of the things that I wanted to say. All I want to say in the end is that what we need to do is that we have seen that women have tremendous capabilities to bring a positive change in the communities. Now, what we all have to do is to bring them together through different programs and engage them more in social causes. And all of the key stakeholders of the communities, be it government, law enforcement, civil society, corporate firms, they all need to recognize the importance and the importance of the contribution that women can bring and should engage them in more and more social programs. Thank you. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you, Ms. Neha, for this amazing presentation. So far, there is no question yet. There will be a time for questions and answers. So if there's any question directed to you, I'll let you know when the time comes. Now let's go to the next presentation, and it will be given by Ms. Anna Christi Suwardi. Ms. Anna Christi Suwardi is a lecturer at the School of Liberal Arts, Mai Luang University in Thailand. Please welcome Ms. Anna Christi.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Okay. All right. So the topic that I would like to share today, it is the current and still ongoing unresolved conflict in the deep south of Thailand. And this is the area of what I'm talking about. These three most southern border provinces, namely Pattani, Yala, and Narathiwat. So these are three southernmost border provinces of Thailand, which is bordering with Malaysia, so northern part of Malaysia. Sorry. Uh, the conflict itself, it is actually very similar to other Southeast Asian countries' conflict trajectories, such as what happened in Aceh, Indonesia, and what happened in the southern Philippines of Mindanao, which means that there is an involvement from some scholars, namely rebel groups or violence group, and also resistant groups. In the case of Deep South of Thailand, so the conflict parties are between the Malays, resistant groups, and the military or security forces, both military and a police of the Kingdom of Thailand or Thailand government. Up to this day, if you travel to this area, you will still find many different checkpoints, military checkpoints everywhere. Historically, this conflict was actually way before, like, around 1960s, and that by that time is when the time of the policy of a nation building identity of Thailand, and the fact that this area used to be an independent sultanate, so-called Sultanate Patani, and fell under Thailand's territory in the modern day. So the fact that by the society, characteristically, the Deep South are Malay Muslim community, which means they are unlike the majority of Thai society who are actually Thai Buddhist. So from these differences of identities, ethnically, religiously, somewhat it's intersects with how the freedom of expression and so on and so forth, and then the political attention also involved there, and that's how actually the conflict has begun. However, it's not until 2004 where the escalation of conflict happened, and I will show you later on in terms of the size of the conflict up to these days. In my presentation, I would like to also focusing on the women's role in the context of how actually women's playing roles in promoting peace, how actually they navigate within the context of the ongoing conflict itself. Speaking of the women's, despite that there actually been an active agents of promoting peace due to their unique potential as non-violent actors, nevertheless, they haven't really been recognized at the decision-making level. So we can see since 2013, meaning that decades ago, the first official peace talk or peace negotiation has been held to resolve this issue. Nearly zero that we had women representative on the peace table. Here is a statistical data to show in terms of the size of the conflict, the casualties, and the incident, and so on. This data is actually goes to a local research body, namely Deep South Watch. So they meticulously record the incidents, number of incidents, casualty in those three, mainly in those three provinces. But also there is one particularly province, namely Songkhla. It's just like a big part of that province. Excuse me. So these are the data from 2004 until 2002. Later on, I will have the whole data in 2023. So up to 2022, we can see that more than 21 million incidents occurred, with also more than 20,000 more casualties number. This casualty number divided into 7,000 more for the death and 13,000 more for the number of injured victims. In terms of the area, the most incident happened in the province of Narathiwat, and then Patani, Yala, and the list is Songkhla. And also we can take a look by the percentage of the casualties itself. In the aspect of gender, meaning like the victims between men and women, we can see here the light orange pie here around 83%. It's actually showed men are the most number of victimized by conflict. I mean, and yes, in terms of women here is 15%. However, we need to be careful in interpreting this, because although women here 15%, meaning that less affected by the conflict. However, this number is speaking of the direct conflict, meaning the direct violence, like injured, dead, and those are the categories. And as we know that when it comes to the impact on conflict and from the gender perspective, women actually in many different conflict settings, at least in Southeast Asian cases here, we have learned from the experiences of Mindanao in the Philippines, the experiences of Aceh in Indonesia. Women actually carried a double burden when the conflict affecting women differently than men. Men mostly in a direct way, meaning like the direct violence. However, for women, it is a multi-layers, including the prolonged impact of the conflict. For instance, when a husband being detained or injured or dead, so then the women take over the roles of the breadwinner of the family, and many more. So that's just from one aspect of economic burden, and of course there are a lot more. So in this context, that from gender perspective, women indeed experiencing conflict indifferently. Well, as I mentioned earlier, in the context of the Deep South, there is a layers or issues of the identities here in the term of religious or ethnicities, right? Between the Muslims and the Buddhists. Although many have tried to ensure that the identity is not the main issue, but it is also involving in the debate, in the attention of how the conflict up until now hasn't been resolved. So the light orange pie here showed 51 point something percent, and the other one 45%. So the 51 point something percent is the refer to Buddhist, and Muslim for 45 more percent in terms of the number of the conflict. These are the data for up to 2022 from 2004. Well, the graph here showed us, up and down numbers of the conflict incidents. However, if we take a look to the total incident and casualties, we can still see clearly that this conflict it's a concerning issue that need to be resolved. So moving on, I would like to share another data from local organization. This data credit goes to DRI Group. This is a recording data during 2003 or in 2023 last year, but this is only until November. These are numbers of incidents in 2023. By the number, like we can see, like at the highest, it's around 50 more incidents, and the least like 16 in September. The percentage of the number of the incidents, incident itself consists of an incident of, for example, bombings, and then car bombings as well, car explosion, which actually happen a lot in public spaces. And these type of violent incidents are actually impacting people in different ways. Directly, of course, the injured and even death, but also, like, you know, keeping the fear, the feeling of under the threat in the society. Therefore, people actually living in the deep south, they're trying to, have their life in a normal way, because the nature also in the deep south has many potential. But then, due to this unresolved conflict, their situation is somehow uncertain, because until the peace negotiation is officially signed, their life is still somehow uncertain and under the threat of the violent incident could occur at any time. This is a specific number addressing about the women's as the victim of conflict in 2023. To share with you all that, again, as I said earlier, that women's actually experiencing conflict in the deep south differently than men, right? So for instance, here in this report, that women are facing a very uncomfortable with to somehow also it is a kind of human rights violation, that they are being tested for their DNAs. Why DNAs? So in the case of there is a for example, there is people, mostly men, who are actually died due to the conflict, and mostly they are the Malay, from the Malay Muslim side. The families, or like mothers, daughters, wives, the officials or the military, they will come to them and ask them to test their DNA. And what for is this DNA test? Is to prove whether or not they are related to the people who are men who are actually died from the conflict, to prove whether or not they are a relative. So because in the context of the Deep South, there are so many warrant lists that the military suspects these people, mostly men, are being part of the Malay resistance group. Well, they kind of classified them or labeled them as rebel or as a criminals in those sense. So it is in a situation that women has to carry out that burden and also impact of the conflict, even they are not directly related to any violent actions. And these are the data of the number of people killed in different cases of the violent. Well, I mean, by the number, of course, like we may say, oh, that's not a lot, right? I mean, like 3 or more, but they are human beings. I mean, they're not just numbers. So it is actually important for us to bring our perspective in the collective matters. So then we can see this issue as a whole. I would like to also bring attention after those, I shared about the context of the violence conflict happening in the Deep South. How about the peace process then? The peace process has been conducted since 2013, so it's more than a decade now. There is a role of Malaysia as the negotiator here or facilitator. However, many also has been questioning the position of Malaysia as Malaysia itself is bordering with the Deep South. So whether or not Malaysia is actually a non-partisan party that can mediate or meditate the peace process, it is remain questions. However, the Malay resistant groups, which actually have different groups or different umbrellas. One of the most well-known ones, so-called BRN, or in Bahasa Indonesia or in Malay, it's called Barisan Revolusi Nasional or Revolution Front, and they held different rounds of peace negotiation. However, until now, the peace agreement has not been signed yet. And speaking for this peace process context, where actually women in those peace process? Women's group through civil society organization or academic community, or even women who are actually in the government, they've been trying to promote, to push, call for counter violence, conflict, and also to promote peace. One of the example of the successful efforts of women's group to promote peace, it was in 2015 actually, when they sent a recommendation to the peace table for call of a what they call as safe zone. This safety zone is actually demanded for a zero violence, zero incidents in the public spaces. It was adopted, however, not lasting for a long time. Why? Because there is an issue in terms of in terms of peace process in the Deep South, is that whenever the government has changed, it means like in Bangkok, they will also change the peace negotiation team. So when the team change, people change, they also change the direction of the peace process, and that's affecting very much on how women also as like group, especially in the grassroots, trying to navigate the influence of their movement to promote peace. Here there are some examples of how women have their efforts in promoting peace and also counter violence. There are 3 different activities has been conducted. This is actually a project I was part of in 2023. The 3 activities consisting, first, we held a workshop on identifying challenges of how actually women can participate in peace negotiation at the peace table more effectively. And there are actually also an attention on how women could navigate within the challenge of structural, hierarchical, and systemic mechanism of the negotiation team. Here we mention A, Party B. Party A means the Thai government, and Party B means the Malay resistant groups. One of the reason also that women hasn't really been at the peace table is that they don't want to be or to force to pick a side, whether on the government side or on the resistant group side. And unfortunately, because of the negotiation mechanism is only that way, then it is hard for women actually being presented and involved directly at the peace talk. We also discuss about how to strengthen the cooperation among women's group, and in this particular aspect of the collaboration among women's group is to also highlight a collaboration between Buddhist women and Muslim women. It is very important to highlight about the identities issues, so that the society, the people could somewhat see that women promote a very non-violent way, so that they could show an example or model of collaboration, even though actually this is between different religious groups. We also conducted a documentary, short documentary video, where we listen to different narrative of female peace builder from different generations. As the conflict itself, let's mention about 2004 violence until now. So there is a different experience narrative of women experiencing conflict, those who are seniors and those who are juniors. How actually they have different thoughts and also perspective on responding to these issues. Most of female senior peace builders emphasize on the importance of understanding of the roots of the conflict, while more female juniors generation, they highlighted on the importance on how to rebranding the image of the Deep South society as peace as other provinces in the country, because this younger generation, they're more likely prioritize to move on to how see the future, and we kind of intended to draw the line and connect it between these two generations. We also conducted a focus group discussion where we identified how both intergenerational women and also both religious women's group come together and identify the priority of what makes women group can be heard at the peace negotiation level. How can they amplify their voices? They have identified here, for example, they tried to align their activism or movement to WPS, or Women, Peace and Security Framework. They also specifically prioritize the participation, prevention, and protection of women. Even though not exactly in the context of DDR, but they also try to adopt the recovery reconciliation aspect, and they drafted a recommendation to different stakeholders, especially at the decision-making level, on how actually bringing their voices. I would like to actually share just short, because I know we have time limited, the short documentary video about the voices of female peace builders from different generation. I will just cut shortly. So let me share the other screen quickly.
ชาวพุทธเนี่ยมีอะไรที่จะต้องเน้นย้ำหรือว่าบอกกล่าวในกระบวนการสันติภาพบ้างคะพี่น้องพุทธที่อยากเน้นย้ำและบอกเนี่ยเราเคยทำข้อเสนอของพี่น้องพุทธและก็ทำงานร่วมเรามีพี่น้องพุทธที่มีกำลังคนน้อยและความคิดหลากหลายนะคะแต่อย่าการันตีคำว่าพี่น้องพุทธ3จังหวัดเนี่ยค่ะว่าเราอยู่ด้วยความแตกต่างกับพี่น้องมุสลิมบางครั้งพี่น้องมุสลิมเนี่ยสามารถอยู่กับร่วมพุทธได้เพราะว่าในส่วนของการอยู่ร่วมแต่ละพื้นที่ต่างกันบางพื้นที่เขาอาจจะติดขัดกับปัญหาที่อยู่ไม่ได้คิดว่าการที่จะนำไปสู่แผนนโยบายต่างๆเนี่ยคิดว่าพี่น้องพุทธก็ได้ทำมาหลายขั้นหลายตอนแต่คิดว่าสิ่งที่พี่น้องพุทธต้องการเนี่ยอยากจะบอกให้ทั้งฝั่ง A ฝั่ง B หรือพี่น้องประชาชนทั่วประเทศเนี่ยต้องเข้าใจคำว่าบริบทของพื้นที่3จังหวัดด้วยคุณอย่าใช้ความเป็นอคติจากที่อื่นมามองบทบาทของพี่น้องพุทธหรือพี่น้องมุสลิมในพื้นที่แล้วพี่น้องพุทธบางคนเขาก็ยังสามารถอยู่กับพี่น้องมุสลิมได้คิดว่าสิ่งที่จะฝากก่อนที่คุณจะฟังเสียงหรือว่าดูโซเชียลจากข้างนอกเนี่ยถ้าคุณเปิดใจคุณสามารถเปิดหรือโทรหาเพื่อนที่อยู่พื้นที่3จังหวัดถามรายละเอียดหรือว่าเรื่องจริงในพื้นที่ให้กระจ่างนะคะขอฝากบางครั้งการที่สื่อโซเชียลมากเกินไปหรือมาการันตีทางพี่น้องพุทธและมุสลิมในพื้นที่ก็ขอฝากพี่น้องพุทธด้วยแล้วก็พี่น้องต่างศาสนาอื่นที่อยู่พื้นที่อื่นเนี่ยค่ะถ้าคุณอยากรู้คุณลงมาดูแล้วก็มาสัมผัสด้วยตัวเองนะคะว่าพื้นที่3จังหวัดกับ4อำเภอยังมีอะไรที่ดีๆนอกเหนือกับเรื่องของความมั่นคงและเรื่องของสถานการณ์ค่ะในฐานะที่การอนุรักษ์เนี่ยมีประสบการณ์มากมายนะคะจริงเราเองเนี่ยอยากบอกคนรุ่นใหม่ว่าไม่ว่าคุณกำลังสุขสบายกำลังประสบปัญหาอะไรใดๆหรือกำลังคำคลีเรื่องอะไรอยู่ก็แล้วแต่อยากฝากบอกว่าความหวังกับตัวเองต้องมีเสมอแล้วก็อยากบอกว่าไม่ว่าเราจะเจออะไรทั้งในครอบครัวในสังคมหรือเติบโตในสิ่งแวดล้อมยังไงก็แล้วแต่เนี่ยจงเชื่อมั่นกับตัวเองเสมอว่าเราก็จะเป็นคนหนึ่งที่จะทำให้สันติภาพมันเกิดขึ้นในพื้นที่ขอให้คุณตั้งใจคือตั้งใจไม่ว่าจะตั้งใจเรียนตั้งใจทำงานหรือช่วยเหลือพ่อแม่หรือเจอทุกข์ยากอะไรก็แล้วแต่ให้มองว่านี่คือบททดสอบที่พระเจ้าทดสอบเราให้มองว่าสิ่งที่เกิดขึ้นทั้งหมดเนี่ย พระเจ้ากำลังจะสอนให้เราเติบโตขึ้นคือข้อดีของพวกเราก็คืออย่างถ้าประสบการณ์ผ่านตัวเองแล้วเองเนี่ยเรารู้สึกอัลฮัมดุลิลละห์ขอบคุณที่เราเกิดมาในสังคมมุสลิมที่มีศาสนาอิสลามที่ปกป้องและคุ้มครองเราอยู่มันทำให้เรารู้สึกว่าหลักศรัทธาเหล่านี้เนี่ยกำลังบอกเราว่าทุกอย่างที่เกิดขึ้นเนี่ยมันมีบททดสอบของมันเพื่อไม่ใช่เพื่อแค่ตัวเราเท่านั้นแต่เพื่อให้เราช่วยเหลือเพื่อนมนุษย์อีกหลายๆคนที่ลำบากกว่าเราดังนั้นไม่ว่าจะเกิดเรื่องอะไรขึ้นเนี่ยย้ำไว้เลยว่าถ้าตราบใดที่เรายังมีสติปัญญาที่มีสติอยู่เสมอเนี่ยเราจะสามารถช่วยเหลือตัวเองได้ช่วยเหลือคนรอบตัวได้แล้วก็ช่วยเหลือพี่น้องคนอื่นที่ลำบากกว่าเราได้
All right, I'll stop there.
Okay, thank you, Miss Anna, for the amazing presentation. Now is the time for the final presentation, which will be given by Miss Rina. Please welcome Professor Rina.
Okay, thank you so much, Enoch. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the presentation from Neha and also from Anna. Okay, and I'll be the last speaker in this webinar. Okay, and it's really interesting to see that how Neha opened her presentation. Remind us what is really the violent extremisms, and then also Anna showcase what happened in South Thailand. And what about Indonesia? I will just give you a very brief introduction. It's like a flashback, especially to the students, because this, this part of the international law subjects, where we talk about human rights and when we talk about peace as well. Okay, so I'll just give a title: Engendering Violent Extremisms in Indonesia, a Flashback. Why I give this engendering? Because previously, when we talk about violent extremisms, terrorism, a lot of people always have in mind that it's always that the man, would be active, took action, in that terrorist action, etc. But now there's a shift of the actions, and more women, when we look at it from the start from the history up to now, there's a very different engagement by the women, before 2000 and then after 2000, how is really the women really active also, well, as the part of the terrorist group itself, and also as the peace builders. So this is what I like to share with you. So when we talk about the history of Indonesia, the terrorists of Indonesia, probably the students in Indonesia are quite familiar with this history, because since we were taught in, I think it's elementary school or the junior or senior high school, we were taught about the formation of Darul Islam, or we call it Indonesia Islamic Army, DITII, which is led by Kartosuwiryo. So at that time, in 1949, Kartosuwiryo is actually wanted to proclaim the establishment of Islamic State. And then this is actually they call it the starting of the terrorism movement, or the violent extremisms in Indonesia, because of the rebellious, from the group of Kartosuwiryo, which wanted to establish the Islamic State in Indonesia. But then what happened, this group and then the movement of Kartosuwiryo is actually could be diminished by the Indonesian National Army, or TNI. And after their defeat, there's a change in the strategy. They use it, women there, helping it, try to open people's minds, saying that it's actually that rebellions or the separatisms from the Indonesian states is actually part of jihad. It's part of the Darul Islam. It's part of the dakwah, against the infidels, So this is actually the women at that time, okay, to approach, because, women to women, it's very easy when they talk about the religions, and then that's why the role of the women of that time is actually through the dakwah, to brainwash, okay, to some people, okay, about what is actually the motivation from this rebellious group. Okay, I'll just call it rebellious group, okay, by using the Darul Islams against infidels. Well, probably some of you will talk about Islamic law later, and what is really jihad in Islam, and I will talk about it later in this context. And then I'm just jumping, okay, because there are many series of histories in Indonesia, but I'm just, picked up some of the very important, okay, that could remind you about the history of terrorism in Indonesia. So it was in 1993, okay, some of you probably were not born yet, okay, or some of you know this gentleman, okay, very famous everywhere. And then when we talk about the Jamaah Islamiyah, okay, which is affiliated with the Al-Qaeda. So a lot of Indonesians also debate that whether it's actually the GI, Jamaah Islamiyah in Indonesia, is part of the Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan, or it's separated, okay, but it has the same visions as the Al-Qaeda, okay. And then what happened in 2000 by Abu Bakar Bashir, okay, and this gentleman, okay, he helped jihad personnel in religious conflict in Maluku. Okay, so those of you who learned about the history of Indonesia and also study about the international law or the national law of Indonesia, and then we discuss about the conflict in Maluku at that time, okay, between the Muslims and then the non-Muslims, okay. And then, interestingly, the roles of women at that time as guards and educators for children, and also help victims of conflict and nurses of peace. So quite different from the previous one when we talk about the role of women during the Kartosuwiryo time, when then the women was actually were used as the educators to bring the da'wah, to brainwash people about the Darul Islam, about the jihad against the infidels. But during the conflict in Maluku, the women becomes, and they suffer a lot because of these conflicts actually in Maluku, okay. They guards and becomes educators of the children, and then also help, okay, people during the conflict. And then let me move to the others, okay? And well, we know that the Bali bombings, okay, those are probably some of you still remember what happened in 2002 and 2004. This is, becomes the international focus, because Bali was a paradise, for tourism, and suddenly happened in 2002, there was a bomb, and then it was followed in 2004, the second Bali bombing. And then the Indonesians' reputation as a peaceful country, okay, in particular Bali, okay, was tainted, and then people considered that Bali was a very dangerous place. In particular, also a lot of injured people, also the deaths, particularly those from Australia, okay. And if you go to Bali, you will see that there's a monument, okay, for this, just to remind people about this tragedy, okay. So it's in Kuta, Bali, there's a monument, okay, for those, the victims of the Bali bombings. Okay, the role of women in that area is also quite different, okay, from the era during the conflict in Maluku, 2000, okay. So in this era, okay, the women is actually help their husband to strive for jihad. Okay, they use always jihad, but probably some of you will ask, what is really jihad in Islam? Okay, if you if you have time, okay, during the question and answers, I will explain about that. Okay, and then these women also prepare the chemical raw materials for bomb making, right, in transportations, and then they also recruit jihadis. They call it the jihadis, they recruit the people, okay, from the Islamic boarding schools or pesantren. Okay, so you see the roles here is from time to time it's quite different. Okay, now the women in this the first and the second Bali bombings is very active, helping the husband, but still secondary. It's not really go into the actions, but it's actually only has helping the husband. Okay, can you please just answer the the phone? Yeah. Okay. So just let me continue. Okay. Sorry for that call. Okay. Now, so when we look at what happened in the first and the second Bali bombings, the women is actually the partner of the husband, but the women did not go to the field, did not use their body as the suicide bombers. No, they just prepare the bomb from the raw materials, things like that. Okay, now, so it's actually there's interesting here when we look at it, how is actually the women directly involved these terrorism actions. Okay, and then we see that name here, like the Mun Fiatun. She's the wife of many bomb executors, Nurdin M. Top, and she prepared Marriott bombs in 2003. Okay, and also, Umi Delima, okay, the wife of Santoso, this also a Poso terrorist leader, because there was also the conflict in Poso, okay, between Muslims and non-Muslims, okay, between Muslims and Christians at that time. And then one of women who really actively participated in military training against the Indonesian army is the Umi Delima. And also, in 2009, Denny Carmelita, okay, is using the bomb, but put in the thermos, and then targeted the President Bambang Susilo Yudhoyono's campaigns. Okay, so you can see that here is actually there's some, from the roles of the women as the educators or trying to brainwash the people about the meaning of jihad against the infidels. And then they help the husband preparing the bombs and preparing other equipments for the terrorist actions. And okay, now the women started by themselves, okay, to become the terrorist herself. They go to the field, okay, they use some equipments, and some of them also has actually become the suicide bombers. Okay, there's another, okay, actually I already talked about this, okay, Umi Delima, okay, and then also in December 2016, Dian Yulianovi, okay, it was arrested. Well, she was planning to attack Istana Merdeka Presidential Complex in Jakarta. And in May 2018, okay, this is, okay, probably some of you already know this. This is a very, virals in the news in Indonesia, because this is the family not only involving the husband and the wife, but also the children. Okay, so this is the 3 suicide bombings, okay, which is involving the family, okay, women and children. And then okay, and then also there was I think it's in 2022. That a woman aimed a weapon at the presidential security, and also that woman was arrested. Okay, and then but no casualties. Okay, no injured people. But then there was like the women. Okay, we can see that actually the women themselves. Okay, perform the action, the terrorist action, okay, or what I can call that the violent extremism. Okay, so now how is actually Indonesia tackle these issues? Okay, in Indonesia we have Badan Nasional Penanggulangan Terorisme (BNPT). I think this is in English we call it National Counterterrorism Agency. Okay, and then the head of the BNPT emphasized that besides internal factors within women themselves, the increasing role of women in terrorism is also influenced by social media. I think this Neha has already tackled, and discussed about how social media could be negative, at the same time could be positive, okay, to counter terrorism. Okay, and then there are many ways, okay, of those who are involved in terrorism group, okay, they use the social medias, okay. There are many, they brainwashed the young generations, the young people, the women, okay, and then they try to give them wrong conception about Islam, become so radical, become so fanatic, okay, which is sometimes they pick up, okay, some of the verses from the Holy Quran, which is not connected to one to the other. They just use it for their own interests, and interpret it as their own ways, which is, I'm as a professor of Islamic law, sometimes I wonder, how could they do this? They sell the religions for their own goods, okay, for their own interest, by saying that this is the true Islam. This is what we call it jihad, okay. And then Islam is actually, it's from salam. Salam means peace. How could you, say that Islam always against those who are non-Muslims, and then create a non-peaceful situation? So the recruitment approach employed by the terrorist group towards women, as we say, women different from towards men. Okay, so the narrative, they use it, the marriage, polygamy, early marriage, piety, and killing can be utilized for women. So so that's why there are some people, okay, when after the Bali bombing, the first and the second, okay, a lot of people feel so unsecure, in particular those women wearing hijab, because they can see, some people consider that those who are wearing hijab, in particular if they wear the mask, veil, okay, and then they say that, well, this must be a radical, but it's not always the case like that. It's because they try to the stigmatization because of the impact from the Bali bombing and the first and the second one. But alhamdulillah, now it's getting better, okay, and a lot of women also very active in the peace building mechanisms, and then they use the social media, and then also through the women's group, okay, Majelis Taklim, we call it. Majelis Taklim is in the mosque, okay, where the women get together, and then they also talk about the peace building and how the women should prevent all those terrorisms and also violent extremisms, and what is the true Islamic teaching, things like that. Okay, so again, there are many cases that why women? Why now the terrorist group, okay, usually use women, okay? Not because they always say that, well, it's actually women are easily led by their husband towards ideology of violence, and then they wrap it in such a beautiful word, saying it's the loyalty of a woman, the wife, and obedience in the religious terms. So they interpret that, they interpret the Islamic teachings, okay, both from the Holy Quran and from the Hadith or the Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad wrongly, and then put the pressures on women that you've got to do this. You cannot say no to your husband, because once your husband go into this radical group, you've got to follow it, even down deep down in your heart, you against it. But they always use it is the part of the loyalty because of the religion. They use the religion's symbols, they use the religious terms, okay, to pressure the women, okay, so that women could follow the husband for the sake of loyalty and obedience in the religious terms, but it's actually is not really the true teachings of Islam. Because the women in Islam is actually have more rights also, equal rights to the men, and then they can say no if the women believe it's against Islam. So the presence of women is crucial in combating radicalism and terrorism. So besides this phenomena that we see that a lot of women were used, by the husbands, were used by the radical groups, but actually they can also be one of the tools, if we can say it, in order to combat radical actions, to combat the militant actions in a positive way. So women, is expected that to fully engage or actively engage in combating radicalisms, in particular through, because now this generation is the millennial and then Gen Z generations, through the online world. So women, is not only that they are used by the husbands of their group, to be the terrorist, but it's actually, we can use also the characteristic of women in the positive sense, so the women can also prevent, the radicalisms and prevent those who are willing to engage in the radical groups or violent extremisms group. Because women, as an educator in the household, has a very important roles in the family. So we can use this characteristic, we can use these characters. This one of the power of women. Can approach the community, can approach other women, and also their children. So let me say here that another effort, to strengthen the role of women is through education trilogy, namely school environment, family, and community. In Indonesia, because I talk about in Indonesia context, family is the foundations. So where the women feel so secure, with the children, with the husbands, but then, it becomes a quite dangerous situation if the husband, as the head of the family, is already involved in the terrorism group or violent extremism group. So that's the most important thing. Women is to educate themselves, to understand what is this action actually, and then not only follow the husband, but the women has to understand about Islam, because the majority of the people in Indonesia are Muslims. So they have to understand about Islam, and then they're not only accepted whatever the husband give them, saying, this is about Islam, and you just follow it like that. So it's also equal important is the as I say, that the preaching and continually equipping and deepening female preachers' knowledge on awareness of intolerance, radicalisms, and terrorism threats. So not only the ustad, the religious teachers, the men, but we have also ustaza. Ustaza is the women's religious teachers, and this is very important, to approach other women, about the teaching of Islam, and then to talk about radicalism, what it's all about, terrorism and the threats, and then again, the true teaching of Islam, and to make other women understand about their equal rights to the men. So when it's something the husbands or the brothers or the fathers, for example, interpret the Islamic teaching wrongly, and then they have to correct it, because in Islam, women and men are equal, for the religions, they have to practice the religions equally. So women also serve as a peace agent, and this is we expected, okay, to be able to provide educations, okay, starting from the family and also to the community, okay, because most of the women in Indonesia usually they have what we call it majelis taklim, okay, that's a group of women. They have the religious teachings in the house of the ustazah, the women's teacher, or to the masjid or to the mosque, okay, and then that's important that the women have to be able to provide to the community about the danger of the radicalism and terrorism, because as I mentioned, that very important. The first is to understand the religion itself. Okay, the women has to understand the religion itself. What is Islam about? How is Islam look at the concept of jihad? What is Islam look at the concept of, for example, the equality between men and women? And that's the most important thing. That's the first pillar that the women have to understand in order to become the peace agents in the family and then the community. Okay, so these are the references that I can give you for the students, and there are other references that you can actually look at when we talk about women's and then terrorism and radicalisms. And then I think in our university we have subjects which talk about the 4 pillar kebangsaan. I think that the Indonesian students understand that when we talk the 4 pillars kebangsaan, meanings in English is the 4 pillars of Indonesian nationals, which is the ideology, the Pancasila, and then the Constitution, 1945 constitutions, and then the United States of Indonesia, and then the 4th is the Bhinneka Tunggal Ika. Okay, so I would like to end this, and I believe that many of you would like to ask in particular, about Islamic law and how it relates to the jihad and everything. So thank you. So I'll.
Okay, thank you, Professor Rina, for the amazing presentation. Okay, thank you very much to all the panelists, and now is the time for questions and answers. So there are questions here, and I'm going to ask the questions in order of the presentation. So I'll first go to Ms. Neha. Hello, Ms. Neha, please, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay. So there are 3 questions for you, and the first one is, how effective is the social media in your country to educate young people to stay from radical or extremist beliefs? And the second is, could you please share whether your organization engages in, could you please share whether your organization engages to prevent the violent extremism? And the last question is from Tilina, and the question says, how can you make government and technology companies understand the importance of women being able to promote de-radicalization? Can you give a specific example?
Okay, thank you for the questions, everyone, and thank you for sharing that with me, Enoch. Lots of questions. So the first one was, how effective is social media in my country in teaching youngsters encountering violent extremism, right? I would say, to be honest, I would say not very effective, or at least not as effective as it should be. But I know that a lot of social media platforms have been trying to create programs. For example, I know of a program that Facebook launched a couple of years ago. It's called Peer-to-Peer Program, in collaboration with different embassies in separate countries. The goal of the program was to identify 50 to 100 universities in each of the countries in South and Southeast Asia, and then identify some of the students in those universities and give training to those students in terms of educate them on how extremist content is specifically crafted and disseminated by agents on social media platforms. Propaganda material suddenly does not become very popular overnight. There are people who spread those content intentionally and craft those content in a way that it hits certain segments of the society. It hurts certain sentiments. They intentionally use certain keywords. So there's a lot of brain that goes behind crafting those messages, and therefore countering those messages also requires that much of deliberation and intention. So a program was launched to train a lot of students to counter those messages. It was successful in some of the, I would not say some of the countries, in some cities of some countries, but it did not become as successful as possible because there was a lot of opposition from the government as well. Like, for example, if Facebook comes to a college and tells people that we want to train some of your students on how to use platform, universities are like, our students are already on social media all the time. Why? What new are you going to teach them? So people did not understand the intent of the program. Government sometimes failed or took time to understand the intent of the program. It is still in progress, but because of multiple factors that failed, it did not become as successful as possible. So I think there's a general reinvent there's a need to reinvent that program and again spread that awareness that how youngsters, especially youngsters who are very tech savvy, needs to be educated on how this material is created and how can they intelligently and sensibly counter this on social media platforms. So I hope that answered some aspect of question. Not very positive, but it's the truth. Second was, I think, was what my organization is doing to prevent violent extremism, right? So currently, I am not directly working in an organization that counters violent extremism. I'm working with an organization that counters cyber abuse, so cyber security threats like spam attack, phishing attack, ransomware attacks, and I counter specifically technical cyber abuse that happens in the internet platforms in general. So my organization, which I'm permanently associated with for the last 1.5 years, does not directly deal with violent extremism, but through cyber abuse, we handle a lot of content that relates to child abuse, and we try to prevent the use by extremist organization and terrorist organization of domain names through which they can create websites and spread propaganda material. So it's a portion of the focus, but it's not 100% focus. But if you want to know more about it, I'm happy to talk about it separately and help you understand, because it's a very technical sort of work that we do now. And the last question, I think, was a two-piece question by Tilina. Thank you, Tilina, for your question. Your question was, how can we make, if I remember correctly, understand governments and tech companies about the importance of the work that women do, right? The short answer is through advocacy, through a lot of advocacy, because women and women communities already do a lot of work in this field. And it is quite important to continuously showcase the results of this work. And the good news is that because of a lot of failed programs, the government and many tech companies have already started realizing the importance of involving women in such programs. I had, for example, just for a specific example, in 2017, I had been associated with a program led by US Embassy in Malaysia, where they ran 45 community programs across the country to develop awareness about preventing violent extremism. But the challenge was there was little to no focus on women participation. And what was the result? 38 of those 45 programs failed or did not generate any positive impact because they failed to capture the cultural or emotional nuances in the community programs that are needed and are primarily brought in by women to make those effective. So now, because a lot of resources and money has gone wasted, there is now more recognition and awareness on the need of women. There's already huge discussion in tech circles and in government circles about the role of women. So the groundwork has been laid, but all of us still need to do a lot of advocacy and bring the work of women to the front so that, as Anna mentioned, so that they can get more seat at the table to solve the problem. I hope that answered some of the questions.
All right, thank you, Ms. Neha, for the answers. Now let's go to Ms. Anna. Hello, Ms. Anna, please, are you there?
Yes, please.
Okay, there are some questions from me, and the first one is there stigmatization against wives and children of those involving in violent extremism in South Thailand? And also the second question is, what are the direct and indirect pressures experienced by women who live in the conflict areas? Thank you.
Okay. So, the answer is yes, it's happened to women and children of a husband or a father who actually died from the violent conflict, who are actually related to the resistant groups. The thing is that it happened for those who are Malay Muslims. Their identity as Malay Muslim, and that's actually related to the data that I showed you about DNA testing. It is actually to prove whether or not women and like certain women are related to those who passed away, who died from the violent conflict, because there is also this is where religion actually has its significance in the context of the case of the Deep South, where someone who died is when they don't do the procession of it, when I mean as they're Muslim, so they don't take the last bath, and they go directly for the procession of when they are the burial. So the people like mostly also from the military side will assume, oh, it is actually part of the them becoming or part of the jihadist. So that's somehow there is a connection from the belief. And coming back to the question about the stigma, they somehow utilize the position of women, which is vulnerable in this sense, on identifying what do you know about the activity that a husband or father used to be involved with, and to try to find connection and also the direction to get to the people who are actually suspected. However, I would like to also share more positive efforts that mostly also women group has been conducted. Is that they women's group came to pay respect and also to give mental support to these families of the victim of the conflict, so that they don't feel like left behind. And most of women's group whom I know, they came together both from Muslim and also Buddhist community. So that's kind of like an effort to encounter these things like the stigma in the society. And speaking of the direct and indirect impact of the conflict, well, the direct of course we know, like when the women were somewhere in the incidents side, so they can got injured or sort of things. However, the indirect part is that I can give an example for, when there is a checkpoint, I would say, like military checkpoint, and then the military will tend to check women, because as a Muslim women, mostly they're wearing headscarf, wearing they call it hijab, so it is easily to identify. So their identity associated, right, is presented obviously. So the people, the military or official, they will ask their ID card, for example. So it is also led to feeling uncomfortable or feeling under the threat or insecure in those contexts. And more example, indirectly, when I had this interview with a student, that they told that their family business has to close down as they were, you know, like they got shot at like their small food stall building and stuff, and then it is impacting indirectly, but somehow in a long term context. So those are what's still kind of like till now going on. But again, speaking of the Deep South issue, as we saw the data, the last data from last 2023, it is, you know, people are trying, especially nowadays in a social media or internet era, people are trying to show the positive side, the beauty side of the Deep South, and trying to counter those negative image of the Deep South, because many, even Thai nationals, they kind of feel like, oh, be careful to travel to Deep South, you know, due to this issue, this violent issue. Again, I mean, I often travel there. Thankfully, thank God, I'm still safe to this day. But yes, I can't deny that those feeling of you know, somehow like concern or afraid or fear, it is you know, exists. But nevertheless, this especially three provinces, they have, like, you know, many different potentials, their nature, their society, cultural, religious practices are very much in a beautiful side. So that's why it is very important that again, people who are actually working on peace negotiation really could come to end actualizing the peace agreement. So that's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Anna, for the answers. Before we go to the questions for Professor Rina, I want to remind all participants that the link for the registration can be found in the chat box. Okay. Hello, Professor Rina, are you there?
Yes.
Okay, I have a question for you, and there's one question in the chat box. So my question is, how do the past histories connect to what happens now as far as violent extremism is concerned? And there is a question in the chat box that says, can you translate the caption of the picture with a puppet in the row of women in slide 1? So someone is asking about a puppet on slide 1, and does it reflect that women are the puppet controlled by their men, or the other way around? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much. Okay. Thank you for the questions, Enoch. Okay. Okay. The first question is how to connect between the past and then the present. Okay. It's very interesting because there's always in a state, okay, any state, I can say that some people pro and contra to the rulings, the administrations, okay, and then it's always going on since the history of Indonesia. Some of the groups would like to have the Islamic State of Indonesia, okay, and then we started with the Kartuswiryo, which is actually what they call it in the past, the history is actually the first rebellious group in Indonesia, which like to establish the Islamic State, which is different from the Indonesia, I cannot say it's more secular state because, you know, in our law, we also integrate the religious Islamic laws in our law. But then they want to form, which is under the constitutions, it's only the Islamic law per se is intact. Okay, so whether you're Muslims or non-Muslims, you have to obey the Islamic law. Okay, so when then from there, because this is against with the motto of Indonesia, which is Bhinneka Tunggal Ika, okay, which is, you know, even we are different, but, you know, we are still this one nation, okay. But then there's group, it has the seat. It is not really abolished, okay, completely by the national army. There's always the group underground, okay. And now because of the internet, because of the technology, and this group can connect with other groups, separatist group in different countries, or what we call it is the terrorist group in different countries. So that's why some people say that the Jamaah Islamiyah is actually connected to Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan. Okay, and then what is today? It's actually still they have the dream that they would like to establish the same as in the past, that this Islamic State, okay, Islamic State of Indonesia as a whole country. It's not like giving a special law to Aceh, Darussalam. Okay, it's different. This is the whole country. It must be under one law, which is Islamic law, and then. That's why, okay, this group, okay, always consider, okay, as I say, they're quite, extremists, okay, extremist group. They always consider those who don't believe in their perceptions and their interpretations of Islam or different from their interpretations of the state, the laws of the state, and then they call them infidels. Okay, they are even we are Muslims. Sometimes they consider us because we are not in their group. Okay, so it's not between religions and religion anymore, but even it's among the Muslims. Sometimes they label us that we are not the true Muslims. So this is quite a problem. But that's why, okay, our government educate. Okay, this is very important, the education, okay, starting from the kindergarten, okay, that's connected with the education trilogy, okay, we talk about the crimes, violence, and terrorism there, and then how it's important women have to educate their children, and how is the women have to understand the true teaching of Islam, okay, and what is really the concept of the national state in Indonesia and things like that, okay, so there's always the connections, okay. Okay, and then the second, okay, speaking about the puppet, yeah. So a lot of people, when they use that for the sake of obedience, because in Islam, of course, there's to say that the woman, the wife, has to obey the husband, but they just put it there because there is another, you know, continuation from there. As long as your husband is taqwa, is piety, okay, meaning as long as your husband, okay, can be a true leader, meaning not against the religions. And then if the husband is have the interpretation wrongly about jihad, wrong interpretations about Islam, and how could because this act is, you know, in the quote and unquote the true Muslims itself. Because Islam, as I mentioned before, is based on salam, is based on peaceful. And then if we have differences, it's also say that, well, when you have differences, you have to discuss about it, okay? And if you have a different faith, okay, and then that's your religion and this is my religion, we're not going to argue about that, you know, things like that. But, you know, this kind of teaching, they only use the provisions from the Holy Quran, only part of it, which is for their own interest, or also from the Prophet's Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's sunnah, okay, or actions or the preachings, okay, they only use it and then try to reinterpret it for their own interest, for their own group interest. So that's why there's a lot of misleading about Islam. So what, as an educator, now we try to give the real path, the real interpretation of Islam. We started from the women, because the women is very important to educate their children. Okay, so we have to change women as the puppet. In Islam, women are not the puppet. We have equal rights and equal responsibilities, even if, well, Islam says that the man is a leader, okay, in the household, but there are other, responsibilities and then rights, okay, which given to the women. Okay, oh well, this is a very long discussion. If I talk about this, it's a one semester subject, actually in Islamic law. Okay, right. I think that I answer all the questions, or are there any questions which is not been answered?
But there is one question for there is one question in the chat board, but because of the time, I think we cannot be answered because the time is almost up, and we have to move straight forward to get the closing remarks from Miss Ninne Zahara.
Thank you, Mr. Osei. Okay, for your Okay, I'm sorry that I'm attending this meeting late. And here I would like to say hello to the speakers, the panelists. Hello, Miss Anna Suwardi and Miss Neha, and also Miss Rina Shahrullah and Miss Neha Vijay. Hello, let me introduce myself. I am Ninne Zahara, and I am representing the ASEAN Studies Center of Universitas Internasional Batam. So today, I would like to that I would like also we cannot meet the head of Women Working Group, which is our partner. Yeah, so I representing her as well, Miss Nukila Evanty, that cannot attend this meeting for today. And I am very glad to announce that our ASEAN Study Centers and Women Study Center of UIB is already collaborated officially with the Women Working Group. So for the next sessions, we might talk a lot more about the human rights issues, and maybe we start from the armed conflict and the gender conflict in the armed conflict in the future, yeah. And then we can also talk more about the special human rights in entrepreneurship and other things. Also here, for today's topic, it's a very special topic because gender and violent extremism is a part of our lives. It's a part of ASEAN households, let's we say, because it's if we're talking about if we're talking about the gender and violent extremism, the victim is mostly a woman. Yeah, from the presentation of the panelists, the victim is mostly women, which in some reasons looks weaker physically, weak in a weaker positions in a household or in society. Yeah, where we're living in this patriarchy tradition, living, patriarchy traditions, they still get along with us. And also the involvement of a radical movement of some religion. So I really thanking the speakers, which giving a lot of insights regarding the gender and violent extremism. And I will look to the future of our cooperation to more discussion about the human rights issues. So thank you so much to all the participants as well. It is already attended this meeting. So I'll give it back to you, the moderator, Osei.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Ninne, for the closing remarks. Okay, now is the time for documentation. Please, can you all open your cameras for the documentation session? Okay, thank you. I want to say thank you to all the speakers and also all the participants. This is the end of the program. Thank you, and I hope we can meet again. See you. Bye. Bye.